The story begins with a man having intercourse with the protagonist on her bed, and she is mesmerized after taking a look at the man's face, as if he must be the most handsome man she has ever seen in her whole life. But she feels like something must be wrong in between, as if she doesn't even know him, so she begins asking him about his identity, and he tries his best to make her feel like she shouldn't be talking much while having fun. Then when he gets onto the main course, she feels like it is hurting her inside out, so there is no way they should keep on continuing it, claiming that she doesn't want to do it anymore, but he is not even ready to listen to her. When she finally wakes up in the morning, she knows that what she saw the previous night was real, and not a dream, as her whole body is covered with hickeys and marks here and there. The protagonist now knows that she has done something that she should not have done in the first place, so she enters the bathroom only to notice that the man whom she had done it with the last night is present there. She instantly grabs her clothes and moves on instead of even taking a look at him. Even though one would think that it is rather normal for some adults to do something together, something else happens because of the incident in the Kin family, as the protagonist was supposed to be married to someone else in the near future. Someone had captured the footage of the protagonist having sex with another guy, and when her sister gets asked about the situation, she claims that the protagonist left with a man she didn't even know while visiting the bar. She insists that she doesn't even know the man, and if she knew that something like this was about to happen, she would have stopped her since the beginning, and the protagonist returns back home at the same time while the ruckus was still going on. Just when she enters the room, her father slaps straight on her face instead of thinking for a second and claims that there is no way she is coming back to the house after doing something shameful. The whole headline makes her feel like her whole life has been ruined, and she adds that she has already lost her consciousness when she was given a drink served by Juwon, who is her sister. But her sister kept on saying that nothing like that happened, and she and her soon-to-be husband had seen her together with the same man before, and even though they had waited for her the whole night until the club was closed, she didn't return. Even though the protagonist is right in this situation, her father thinks that listening to her will be nothing but a nuisance and thinks of shutting her down. The protagonist goes to her soon-to-be husband Gu Cheng asking him if he surely believes her not, but he claims that is not worthy of being his wife. Even so, the protagonist is not ready to hear that she is about to be abandoned by him as well, since she is not the one at fault in this one, but he is not even ready to listen to her in any way. Realizing that she is not about to accept the whole thing that easily, he gets out the phone to show her what is happening at this moment, and the protagonist tries her best to take the phone away from him, only to be forced out of his way onto the floor. At that moment, the protagonist feels like she is remembering something that happened last night as her sister came in to let her have a drink, and she started asking her sister why her future husband was not in the club yet. Ween told her that there was a chance that he must be stuck in the traffic, and she left her all alone in the club, saying that she wanted to visit the bathroom. Soon when the protagonist had the drink, she started feeling rather unwell, as there must have been something mixed with the drink, and even her sister was not coming back. Just when she was about to go to find her, she stumbled her leg and fell down on some man that time. But the man noticed that she was unable to even stand, so he asked her where she wanted to go at the time, only for her to say that she wanted to leave to find her sister. But noticing that she doesn't have someone with her, the man tried her best to handle her drunkenness, only for him to pick her up. Remembering what happened to the protagonist up until then, she starts blaming what happened on her sister, as she is the one who handled the glass in the first place. But the future husband comes in the middle, saying that she should stop framing others for what she had done, adding that he must have beaten the man if her little sister was not with him to calm him down. Now the protagonist feels like her sister knew that he came, but she intentionally didn't call him, and Ween keeps on saying the same thing that the protagonist is trying to frame her right now without even accepting it. But when the situation goes on for some time like that, the protagonist feels like even her future husband was in everything in the whole situation, and starts blaming them for that. Guan and Ween both leave, saying that she is dirty and whatnot, and even her father claims that her sister will take her place in the marriage instead of her, to keep the balance of the reputation of their family. Even though the protagonist claims that there is no way something like that will happen, since she is actually her fiancé and not her sister's, her dad suggests that it will be better if she marries the same person she had fun with, and there is no way he is believing any of her words. But the fact that she will have to find the same guy once again to marry him makes her feel rather absurd in the first place, and she feels like he is about to lose his mind once when she asks him to marry her. The whole time she feels like she must be rather cheap to do something like this, and when she enters the room where the man is sitting, the assistant reminds the man saying that the protagonist must be the beautiful person she took with him yesterday. But she is unable to see him since she has been looking for him the other way, asking all of the bartenders, and the assistant begins to chat with the man to mock him by mentioning something like that, as if he barely had enough strength on him yesterday night. The protagonist adds to the waitress saying that she already knows that the man works in there, so there is no issue for her to find him, as she only needs her help. The assistant and the man realize that she looks rather persistent in finding him. But for some reason, the waitresses and all of the waiters are unable to locate him, as if they are intentionally avoiding speaking about him in the first place. Just when she is about to cross the boundary of asking about the man, the same man appears behind her all of a sudden, whispering in the protagonist's ears, asking if she has been looking for him the whole time. When the protagonist thinks of turning back, she falls into his arms once again, giving him a chance to mock her helplessness, which forces her to push him away afterwards. But when the man fixes his hair while getting a chance with her, the protagonist feels like she is about to blush and lose her mind watching over a handsome person ahead of her. At the same time, someone else comes in holding on to the same guy, adding that she has been looking for him the whole time. Then when the woman keeps on holding on to him, the protagonist thinks that he must be some kind of manservant at this point, and he keeps on smiling at her, which makes her scoff at him as she notices the drama ahead of her. Soon enough, when the other woman asks him to get on going, the protagonist stops them, saying that they should wait, as if she has to say something to the man. The protagonist immediately gets out her VIP credit card, saying that she is about to double the price she was paying, making the man feel like she must be generous after all. The man then insists to the other woman, saying that they should be meeting the next day instead, and the woman scoffs at the protagonist, only to move outside at the moment. As the woman gets outside, the protagonist thinks of having a chat with the man outside to confirm what happened yesterday. She instantly gets onto the price, asking him what he wants to do, as she is agreeing to double the pricing for him, and the handsome man named Lai Fengdu thinks that the protagonist is thinking of him as nothing but a gigolo, so it must be rather interesting, and the main factor there is that she is even accepting to have a fake marriage with him feels rather unreal to him. Instead of thinking about the proposal much, the protagonist's proposal gets accepted, and they get on with registering the marriage between each other. The whole time, the protagonist is unable to believe that she ended up marrying a gigolo in the end, which means that she must be in rather despair in this whole situation. As the marriage is finally done, the protagonist claims that there is about 25,000 in her credit card, and she will give him the rest when they are done with the divorce. Even though he is not a gigolo, Fengju thinks that he will go along with the plan for now, only to ask her if she has been planning to have a honeymoon sooner or later. But she explains that it is nothing like that, as she was chased out of her house recently, and instead of waiting on what has happened, Fengju takes the suitcase in his grasp to take her to his house, as she has been chased out of her house. Even though she is not ready to move on to his house, the man insists that she has to do what he says if she has been satisfied with her service the other night, which gets her face all red. She even claims that she will do the chores available in the house, so she will not be living in there for free for sure. Just as they enter the apartment, the protagonist gets hit by some kind of dust smoke, meaning that he has not been in there for a while now. Fengju claims that she will be able to stay in here, and the spare key is in the second drawer below the television in case she is unable to find it on her own. But just when he is about to move on, she claims that she is yet to know how she should contact him, as she doesn't have a way to call him in any way. Later at night, Fengju can be seen riding the car, and he gets called by his assistant saying that the weather is rather nice today, and knowing that he is about to say something nonsensical to him, Fengju warns him, saying that if he keeps that up, he will end the call as soon as possible. But he instantly shifts into saying that he brought someone into his forbidden apartment, which he has heard from one of his informants. But Fengju thinks that the whole thing is in the past right now, as he is married right now. But the assistant feels like he is about to lose his mind, as he is unable to believe that his boss is seriously married right now, and Fengju doesn't feel the need to talk about it, so he leaves his phone on the back seat. On the other hand, the protagonist keeps herself busy readying the clothing of Fengju on her own, only for her to lie down on the bed, finding nothing else to do anymore. Then, while she lies down on the bed, she feels like she should have guessed that her sister and her fiancé were planning to do something like that since the beginning. Just when she closes her eyes, she remembers the thing that her sister said to her when she was about to leave the house in the past. At the same time, she also mentioned that the family wouldn't allow her to have someone who is a gigolo as her husband, and she will have nothing to do with her family in the future for sure. Even though one would think that she would be forgetting it, the protagonist promises on her own to her, saying that she is not about to forget what she had done to her. But she falls asleep knowing that there is no use thinking about it anymore, as it has already been done in the first place. Just when the clock retracts at 3:20 a.m., Fengju comes back into the house to climb her body, as if she is about to make out with her while taking off the blanket from her body. When she finally notices that the guy has been trying to do something, she feels like she is about to lose her mind and starts crying and screaming as if she was not expecting him to do something like that. But he insists that she should stop reacting to it and asks her to stay like that, which makes her wonder what he has been trying to do while getting the smell of alcohol from his body. While holding on to her, he keeps on calling another woman's name, which gets the protagonist even more disturbed, and keeps on trying her best to get him off of herself. But he manages to gather his strength to get a grasp on her, and he manages to get her hands tied with his tie, so he is able to do what he wants. He keeps on taking his hand below her outfit, and Fengju keeps on calling the woman's name to forcibly make out with her once again. Instead of listening to her begging him not to continue what he has been doing this whole time, Fengju doesn't stop there and keeps on continuing what he has been thinking of on the way home. Even though she realizes that he has been acting like he doesn't know that he knows that she is not the person he has been calling this whole time, Fengju doesn't stop having her all the way even after being punched in the face. In the end, the guy gets what he wanted in the first place, and the protagonist keeps herself busy picking herself away from him, but she is unable to do so at the end of the line anyway. At dawn, when Fengju wakes up, he begins to wonder what the protagonist has been doing beside him on the bed, and he looks at her face as she keeps on mumbling and calling him a bastard for what he has done the previous night. When he remembers what he has done, he feels like there is no going back as he has committed the sin that he should have never done, and he feels like it was no dream after all. After tidying himself up, he covers her body once again as he is about to leave for the outside world, only to be stopped by something else. As he is about to leave, he feels like he has been seeing something else as the whole house looks like someone has thoroughly kept the house clean. The whole situation even makes him feel like he must be in some kind of weird dream where his house is all tidied up once in a while, only to realize that the protagonist must be the one who has done it, as she didn't want to live in the house for free. On the other hand, when the protagonist finally wakes up, she remembers what happened to her the previous night and begins to take a look at her body, which works as a perfect reminder to her. Shame keeps on engulfing her whole body when she looks at the clothes falling on the ground, and she feels rather hungry as she walks out in the living room. She finds out that someone has been smoking inside of the house the whole time, and that person is sitting in the living room, no one other than Fengju. The whole situation gets her enough mad to take the cigar away from his hand, and she mentions what happened the previous night as he behaved that way with her. While she keeps on waiting for some kind of answer from him, he remembers the woman he once loved in his life, the protagonist carrying the same old aura around her. She clears up saying that she is not Mu Ling, who is woman he has been looking for this whole time, while uttering her name, and Fengju asks her back if she is finally jealous of someone after all. Blushing, the protagonist thinks of going away from him, but he holds onto her hand, forcing her to fall on his body, and he mentions that it is rather legal for him to sleep with her, so there is no use acting like that from now on. Then, when he begins glancing at her body, she feels like he must be rather perverted if he is able to do something like that only for her to remind him that they are not actually a married couple. She now insists, saying that they have to meet some kind of agreement in between, as they are here only to save each other's faces and nothing else. No matter what she keeps on saying to him, he once again closes the distance between them, only for her to remind him that they have to maintain a distance between them from now on. Even though she keeps on making the whole situation clear to him, he is unable to even comply with any of the rules set up by her. Even though she is ready to forgive him for what he has done yesterday night, he keeps on acting the same way once again, and the protagonist feels like she is about to be torn apart by her once again. The whole situation gets her so desperate that she screams into his ears, saying that he should be looking clearly as she is not the person named Mu Ling. But Fengju feels like the more he acts like this, the more she will tend to think of him even more closely from now on, and nothing of defense keeps on working out for the protagonist. When she tries to throw off her legs once again as he keeps on being closer to her, he is able to grab it almost instantly, as if he can read through her mind without any worries, mentioning that one doesn't have to be that impatient like this. But Fengju claims that if she is able to say that he is strong enough, he will think of leaving her like this instead of doing anything, so she agrees to the statement, so he ends his play. Even so, he acts like a perverted lover once again by making out with her, and the end results come out with more teasing like what happened the previous night tirelessly, as if there is no end to Fengju's perverted romance. When the protagonist wakes up once again, she notices that the guy is nowhere to be found in the house, and she gets so irritated that she thinks that he must have really gone to work this time after taking advantage of her, which he wanted to do since the beginning. She feels like she doesn't even have the strength to stand up anymore and keeps on cursing his immorality, and she notices how gradually her body has been changing in a short amount of time. But the way she thinks of the whole situation, she feels like she has been betrayed by everyone in her family, including Fengju as well, since they only agreed to a fake marriage, and they didn't even have to have sex after all. When she leaves the house to get around the near-side areas, everyone begins to take a look at her, wondering if she doesn't even feel warm in this kind of weather like everyone else. Even when she is in the market, the woman selling groceries keeps on asking her about what has happened as she is wearing warm clothing in this kind of temperature. But she claims that she is not feeling something like that at all and leaves the market after finishing her purchase. On the way, she notices that there is a shop selling flowers and thinks of taking a look in the shop to see if there is something nice in there. Just when she is about to enter the shop, she feels like she is able to do better as she had the lesson which taught her how to do flower arrangements in the first place. As soon as she gets into the shop, a girl asks her what she is looking for, and she claims that she is the one who is interested in applying to have some kind of job that they have been looking a recruit for in the first place. The girl thinks of calling the manager and asks her to wait for her for a bit, and she takes the time to check out the flowers on her own in the meantime. As soon as she looks back when the manager calls her, the man introduces himself as Lin Shange and asks her if she has some kind of experience when it comes to being a florist, which is kind of necessary to get in. The protagonist begins to explain how she learned how to achieve more experiences in school by doing flower arrangements, and the man thinks of having a chat inside his office for the work. On the other hand, Fengju looks moodier than ever in the office, and even though the assistant has been having a good time on his own, his mood changes as Fengju walks in. He realizes that his mood must be worse than ever, so he starts uttering the words related to the situation in the market, and Fengju is unable to keep the protagonist out of his mind this time around. The whole feeling around the same woman over and over keeps on irritating him, and the assistant thinks that he is rather disturbed today, so he should have to keep himself away from having any funny incidents with him. Then as soon as the assistant gets called by someone, the person claims that Kin Loi's sister has gotten to Fengju's house to cause some trouble, and he ends up hearing it as well. Just when they have the news of the woman going into the apartment, she keeps on ringing the doorbell of the apartment, only for the protagonist to get outside to check out what is happening. Then, when the protagonist asks her to get into the house, she begins to ask her what she is doing in this kind of place, as she has been losing her mind getting into the area in the first place, as she had to take a walk into the whole location. But the protagonist thinks that it must be great that she is suffering like this, as she must not be in a good situation either, and Ziwin mentions that it is not much for her as she has been busy heading out for her wedding dress in a while, adding that she doesn't like to get tap water. While standing outside in the doorway, she claims that she only came in here to invite her in the wedding, and nothing else, which darkens the face of the protagonist. On the inside, her sister thinks that it is great for her to see that she has been living in poverty while she used to be the one having everything from her father, meaning that she has no right to receive Guancheng in any way while she is the better one. Instead of being broken by the situation, the protagonist acts like everything is fine and claims that there is no way she would like to avoid her wedding since she is her little sister. To make the situation rather uncomfortable for the protagonist, Ziwin begins to hold her hand, adding that she has to bring the brother-in-law, as well as she is rather impatient to get her embarrassed by the whole family, as if she is losing her sleep to do so. Even so, the protagonist claims that she will do what she wants, and the whole story happening in the office of Fengju is rather picturesque, as the assistant now knows that the protagonist has been thinking of him as some kind of gigolo. At the same time, Fengju is wondering how someone like the protagonist is about to bring him into the wedding at the moment, but he thinks that something will happen in the course of time, so there is no issue with that. After having the whole situation fixated in his mind, Fengyu goes back to his house to see that there is another pair of shoes, meaning that the sister is still in the house. Also, when the protagonist notices that he is back again, she is unable to believe that he would come back this soon in the house, and she begins to ask her why he is so early all of a sudden at this time after all. Then when he sits at the dinner table, he claims that he is kind of hungry, while the protagonist is too busy to wonder if he doesn't have work at this time of the day. But when Fengyu thinks of it, he feels like he must be forgetting that he is considered a gigolo at the time, so it is normal for the protagonist to guess that he still needs to work the whole night. Then when he claims that he doesn't think of working anymore, the protagonist overreacts, asking why he would be coming back to the house even though he decided to skip for the day. Now that the protagonist thinks of the situation, she feels like it is normal since it is his house after all, and she adds that she has printed out the contract paper between them so he will be fine signing them when he is comfortable. But the aura around the whole dining table is rather gloomy as he courses through the whole situation on his own. Then as she notices that he is making a gloomy face at the time, she presents some food in front of her, asking him if he would be interested in having some food with her. He instantly thinks of having some, and when he finally gets to taste the food, he feels like it tastes great. So she goes back to the kitchen to bring the soup that she made on her own. The way he keeps on eating the dishes makes her feel somewhat better, and when she finally gets to the kitchen holding the soup, she notices that he has already finished eating the food presented before him. Realizing that she doesn't have much food left for her, she thinks that she will have to drink the soup as he has finished the food on his own now. As the dinner is done, the protagonist gets busy cleaning the dishes and everything, and Fengju keeps on glancing at her to realize that she is rather great when it comes to housework in the first place, as she ended up cleaning up everything on her own. Now that she has done all of the housework, she thinks of handing the paper over to him so they are able to wrap it up between them. She gets to the living room to see that he has been sitting on the couch the whole time as they make slight eye contact with each other. Instead of waiting for much time on her own end, the protagonist takes the contract to show it to him that he has to sign it. The protagonist even insists that if he needs some time to go through them, they have another copy to work with if there is an issue with it, so they will both get each copy for their own. Instead of signing the papers, he throws off the paper asking her if she is really that scared to let him touch her, and she claims that she really doesn't know. Then when he asks her if she doesn't have anything to say to him, as he has been expecting to hear something else, the protagonist once again reminds him of the same thing. The whole situation annoys Fengju so badly that he decides to leave the apartment to get outside. He doesn't even come back the next day to speak with the protagonist, making her realize that the whole situation had gone sideways, and not how she wanted it to go in the first place. While Fengju is busy skipping coming back home, trying not to see the protagonist's face, she begins to wonder where he must be as she is continuing to work in the flower shop she started working. She wonders if he is still mad at her for making the contract with him, and the manager asks her and Manwin to go and send the samples to reach out to their customers. It seems that the jewelry mall has ordered a bunch of samples from the shop, and the protagonist thinks that it is only normal as they barely lack any money to order anything. The protagonist begins to remember that she must have visited the shop with her sister previously, and now she cannot even go back home. Soon enough, Manwin notices a guy, so she points at the protagonist, saying that the guy is really handsome only to feel like they must be some couple as they have been hanging around the market for a while now. As the protagonist notices that the guy is Fengju himself, she becomes speechless, and Manwin realizes that the woman along with the guy is named Ai Nuer. Even though the protagonist now knows that women is the only reason why he didn't come back home, and Manwin explains to her that the woman with him is the female lead for Wind and Rain, she was never expecting her to have this handsome boyfriend. Now that the protagonist thinks of their marriage, she thinks that he has to be rather perverted to hang around with another woman while still being married to her. She thinks of avoiding meeting the guy and thinks of getting to work as they would get scolded by the manager if they were late for their work. Manwin thinks that the store manager is a good person, so there is no way he would think of scolding them, and insists that she needs to take a few more looks at the people ahead of them. But being mad at seeing such an unfortunate event ahead of her, the protagonist leaves without waiting for Manwin, and when the protagonist looks back to move on, she runs into the same celebrity woman hanging around with her husband. The collision makes the Nuer accidentally slip away the gift package in her hand, and she starts scolding the protagonist for doing so. When the protagonist picks up the package from the floor, she looks at Fengju, and Nuoer gets irritated by the fact that she has been looking at her boyfriend for a while now instead of moving on. As the conversation heats up, Nuoer warns the protagonist, saying that if she ends up breaking the precious item in the box, then she will have to compensate for it in the first place. Knowing that she cannot compensate for something so luxurious, she bows her head down in front of them, asking for their forgiveness. But the idea of her bowing to such a woman fascinates Fengju, but he decides not to say anything for now as she is trying to get along with him. While Fengju is busy remembering what happened between him and the protagonist a few days ago, Nuoer claims that he has to wait for her for a while as she has forgotten to do something beforehand. She warns the protagonist before leaving, and she stays silent the whole time, knowing that she cannot afford to have a fight with someone better than her in every way. When the protagonist keeps on crying about what has happened to her, Manwin comes to check up on her, asking if she is okay. But the protagonist explains that she is not crying because of the woman, and she is crying because her husband in name didn't think of helping her even for once. Even so, Manwin decides not to think about the incident so much as the protagonist has to attend the wedding the next day, so it will get worse if she ends up swelling her face right now. Because of Manwin, she remembers that she still has to attend a wedding, and Manwin insists that she should keep remembering good things only by forgetting the bad things in her life. Knowing that her house is on the way back to their workplace, Manwin thinks of leaving all the samples before heading back home, and she suggests the protagonist take some rest instead of running into the office with her. On the other hand, Fengju can be seen with Nuoer, and she is concerned that he has been ignoring her for a while. Fengju wonders how he thought of even trusting someone like her, as she is nothing less than a pathologic hypocrite. Then when Fengju notices her on the way back to getting on the taxi, Fengju wonders why she has been trying to gain his sympathy by putting on such a pitiful face for the time being. Instead of caring much for Nuoer, he moves away from her hand, saying that he needs to take care of something rather important beforehand. Later on, the protagonist can be seen watching TV and eating alone at home as she has nothing else to do, and her heart feels miserably empty remembering Fengju. But even so, she thinks that something must be wrong as she keeps on remembering someone like Fengju despite him being a manservant. All of a sudden, when she hears that someone has been knocking on her door, she wonders who it must be at the time of night, as there is no possibility of Fengju coming back after what happened between them in the morning. When she finally peeks into the other side of the door, assuming that there is a thief entering the house, she notices that the assistant has been carrying Fengju the whole time as he is drunker than usual. The assistant is already exhausted from carrying Fengju, and he wonders if it is all right for him to call the protagonist to take care of him, as she must be already asleep in her room. Soon enough, the protagonist enters the room while carrying a lamp in her hands, asking if a thief has entered the house while she was lying down on her bed. The assistant gets scared of her sudden arrival and tries his best to calm down the situation, saying what has happened. When the protagonist asks why he must have drunk like this the whole night, he thinks that it must have been caused by his bad mood or something similar to that. But the protagonist is unable to wonder why he must have been in a bad mood, as he was busy hanging around with AI Nuoer, and the fact that Fengju has an assistant makes her feel weird, as gigolos do not usually have someone to follow them around. Then when she starts asking the assistant about if he must be another servant as well, he thinks of accompanying the whole idea, so the whole thing annoys the hell out of the protagonist while he is busy holding off his laughter. Even though the protagonist insists that he should be moving away with his boss from this house, he is unable to wonder why as he asked him to move into the house before losing consciousness. When he starts moving him into the bedroom, the protagonist tries her best not to do so, but he does it in the end anyways. Assuming that he has done his work here already, he thinks of moving on and vanishes in thin air instead of caring what is about to happen the next morning. When the assistant is gone, the protagonist thinks of what she must be doing this time around, as she doesn't have time to take care of him since she has to attend the wedding of her sister the next day. She tries her best to wake him up by holding his face, but he barely responds anything even after being slapped on his face. Realizing that he is not about to wake up in any way, she thinks of cleaning up by taking off his shoes for the time being. But when the protagonist goes on to take his shoes off, he begins to turn away from bed, and she thinks that she doesn't have much of a choice. She then feels like there is no way for her to cross the whole situation, and she thinks of letting him make some way for her to sleep on the bed. when she sees that the whole situation is about to escalate if he doesn't listen to her and thinks of taking the sofa for the night. Even though she thinks of taking a spare blanket to move on, he suddenly grabs her hand, which kind of shocks as it is unexpected. When she understands that he must be awake, he holds her hand to take her into his arms, and she is unable to even understand what he is trying to do at this point. He once again embraces her, uttering the wrong name in front of her, while she tries her best to make him get that she is not the person he wants to have right now in his arms. Then when she gets to hear the impending pain in his voice, the protagonist begins to wonder what kind of person she must have been who was able to make someone like Fengju have this much heartache in the first place. Then she feels like it might not be the first time that he is facing something like this, so she holds him down, saying that she is not about to go away without him anywhere, so he is able to sleep in peace. Soon enough, he releases her body and gets down to the bed to fall asleep. But this time, she seriously feels like he must not be a manservant after all, and insists that it might be the reason behind someone named Muling moving on to wallow him in this kind of degeneracy. Also, when she looks back into the past memories, she thinks that this place might be where Fengju used to live with his love, and he has given her the chance to live in here as the replacement for Muling. Even though it might be some kind of fake marriage, the protagonist cannot help but feel sad about the things happening around her. Then she begins to say to him that she is really scared that she will fall in love, and she even thinks that she is not even qualified to stay in this place. Then the next day, the protagonist gets to the wedding venue, and everyone looks rather busy maintaining the timing of the whole situation, and it makes the protagonist feel like she might be too early into the function. Then when she finally looks at her sister, she feels like there is no way she would have the right to smile this brightly after stealing her happiness. Then on the other hand, Fengju wakes up asking for water from the protagonist, and notices that he is sleeping all alone while there is no one to get water for him. As he looks beside him, he realizes that the protagonist must have gone to the wedding, making him feel like she is too embarrassed to even bring him in there, as she will be ashamed of having him as her husband. While he is busy wondering what she must be doing, the protagonist starts sneezing as if someone has been speaking of her, and as she sits on one of the chairs in the audience, people keep on pouring in. Then, as her sister keeps on staring at her, the protagonist feels like there is no way she would have been able to bring Fengju to gulp down this kind of shame with him, while he has done nothing wrong in this whole situation. On the other hand, while her sister is busy preparing for her bridal ceremony, she begins to ask the others if the protagonist has come in already in the function to attend it, but she barely has any information to offer as no one has told her about it. But instead of caring about the makeup, her sister gets up from her seat, and she thinks that she will have to take a look outside to make sure that she is already in here. Just when she thinks of calling her for not being present in the scene, she notices that the protagonist is already present in the audience while wearing one of the shabbiest clothing she had on her, as if she is settling down in her poor life pretty nicely. Soon enough, she reaches out to the protagonist, saying that she has been waiting for a long time, and the protagonist claims that she only reached minutes ago. Instead of caring about anything else, she goes on to ask her why she is wearing something so shabby, as she is about to get married, which is considered the biggest day of her life. Even though the protagonist is annoyed the heck out of her life being in this situation, she knows that her sister is intentionally doing something like this. Then she holds on to her hand, adding that she has to go and meet her father as soon as possible since he is inside waiting for her right now. Now that the father and daughter are face to face with each other, none of them were expecting to see each other in this kind of scenario ever in their life. As soon as they meet each other, the father claims that the protagonist shouldn't be messing around today, as it is her sister's wedding, meaning that he doesn't even trust her for a bit in his life right now. Her sister then takes her into the bridal dressing room and starts explaining how Guancheng is trying to make this a grand wedding, even though she tried her best to say that she didn't want it to be this lavish in the first place. The whole speech made by her sister gets ignored by the protagonist as she keeps on sipping on the drink she has gotten for her. She guesses that her sister thinks that she might be trying to make it look like she doesn't care, but she feels like she must be jealous of the whole situation. As she feels like the conversation is not even spicy enough, she brings out the topic related to Fengju and asks her when they are about to make it up, as the wedding day is considered the most important one for someone in their life. Then, instead of hiding the fact through lies, the protagonist claims that they are not even trying to make it up at all anymore, and her sister feels like she must have done something well by forcing her to marry someone who is nothing but a manservant. Not being that caring about the situation, her sister forces upon the fact, saying that she has to take some lessons as she has been passing her whole life acting like a spoiled one, and the more dignified she is, the bigger the embarrassment will be for her. While the whole conversation was about to escalate for both of them, someone got into the room saying that they needed to bring out the veil to prepare to start for the main course of the wedding day. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to stand the whole thing on her own, the protagonist gets moving into the crowd while the bride and the groom prepare to kiss each other. As the protagonist keeps on watching the whole show from afar, some people come from the back asking if she still remembers them, and the woman is none other than Miss Zhao, who she surely remembers still now. But one of them starts laughing at her face, and they claim that the protagonist came to arrange flowers in her house, which is rather embarrassing for her. Others keep on speaking of how she married someone who is nothing but a manservant, and now she is running around from the family, and Miss Zhao is unable to believe how something like this can be the truth. Then as the situation keeps on escalating, and the protagonist feels like she might be ruining the whole function by being present here, she thinks of moving on from the party while they keep on laughing at her face. Then when she keeps on moving away from the scene, her sister keeps on laughing at her, knowing that this day would have come someday which the protagonist must have never expected in her whole life. On the other hand, the protagonist gets the idea of the whole upperclassmen laughing at her, which makes her understand the gossip which they used to keep on dwelling on the whole time. Knowing that it is better to get out of sight, the protagonist thinks of moving on to the ballroom where no one would be able to annoy her in the first place, as she is already fed up with the women in the bridal ceremony. Soon enough, the ballroom starts to fill up with laughter and happiness, and Guancheng comes in holding onto his wife. They keep on announcing the whole function by apologizing to everyone in case there was any kind of inconvenience from their side. While looking around the tables, her sister realizes that the protagonist has been sitting at one of the tables in the corner, so no one is able to see her. Her sister lets her husband know that the protagonist has come in here today as well, which makes him wonder if she must be rather shameless to do something like this. They then go over to the protagonist at once, and she instantly stands up, seeing that they have the audacity to even disrespect her like this in front of everyone at this point. The protagonist tries her best to evade any kind of eye contact from her side, and her sister insists that they have to do some toasts together. In the whole awkward moment, she agrees to her sister, wishing her a lifetime of happiness, while the whole audience is looking over their shoulders because of her. When the first phase of disrespect is not enough, her sister brings out the topic of meeting her husband, which makes Guancheng say that he is not even worth it to be called like that. Then the husband forces her by screaming, saying that he wants to meet the person who made the protagonist to cheat on him in the first place. The protagonist is already trembling, knowing that they are doing this whole scene on purpose, and when their father is about to go up to calm the situation down, the mother holds him off, saying that there is no way he is about to meddle into the situation. She thinks that the protagonist is having the whole backfire because of her own behavior, so there is nothing they can do right by meddling in it. Even so, her father thinks that the protagonist is still his daughter, so it is better that he has to act indifferently in this situation as well. But the mother makes him understand that the only thing that they are allowed to do in this situation is watch over from the sidelines. When her father thinks of loopholes to calm the situation down, the mother consistently reacts, saying that there is no in-between scenario for them to hold on to, as they surely cannot give in as elders. But on the inside, she thinks that she had to take a lot of time to get her out in the first place, so there is no way she is about to bring her anymore into the family, as if she has been planning to do this since the beginning. After hearing from his wife, the protagonist's father sits down while hoping that he can be forgiven, as he is unable to help his own daughter in her misery. Then when she is unable to drink the glass of wine, her sister begins to question the protagonist for being unable to drink it, as if she is still blaming her and her husband for this situation. If the situation wasn't that bad, her sister begins to plead with her, saying that she did not intend to take away Guancheng from her, only if she and Fengju hadn't do those things before the marriage, it would have never happened. Listening to the bullshit made by those two, the protagonist instantly gulps down the whole glass on her own, as she doesn't want to stretch the situation even more, claiming that she has never blamed them for what happened, as she always knew that she liked Guancheng since the beginning of the marriage-related conversations. When the situation is about to be resolved, her sister brings the topic of her current husband working as a manservant, and the protagonist realizes that she has gone far enough already. Her sister forces the protagonist, saying that she must be bringing in her brother-in-law for the party as he is unavailable right now, and the others keep on calling him a manservant to bring more shame to the protagonist's name. But when they keep on laughing around the protagonist like she has no right to even live in the same world as them, Fengju keeps on walking into the stage along with his assistant, and everyone is unable to wonder how someone this handsome is walking in on the scene. Then as soon as the protagonist and Fengju meet their eyes, she is way out of her mind to wonder what he must be doing in this function all of a sudden, and the girls keep on fangirling after seeing his face. They begin to wonder which family inheritor he must be to look this great in the first place, and the protagonist insists that he should be leaving right now instead of insulting her even more. But he doesn't understand any of her hand gestures even for a bit, and as he moves in, he looks into her reactions wondering if she must have gotten bullied by the crowd heavily in the first place while he was not in there. Then even the protagonist's father begins to wonder who he must be as he doesn't remember inviting someone like him, and there are two men following behind Fengju. It seems that one of them is an influential leader named Yahello and another one is Zionai who works in very economic media. Now that her mother knows the people following him behind, she wonders what Yahello is doing here as he is the executive director of H&J Group. Even though the father keeps on holding the excitement in his own self, they are unable to even imagine who the person walking in front of them must be in this situation. The whole scenario changes when Fengju holds the protagonist's face, saying that they have already agreed to come together in the first place, as if they are in a romantic movie. All of the other girls keep on feeling like she must have stolen the love of their lives, and the resentment begins to pour into their hearts. All of the women present at the scene realize that the man being a manservant must not be true after all, as if there is some hidden meaning behind the whole situation that they are not getting at all. On the other hand, the frustrated protagonist asks her husband why he decided to come to this place after all. Then instead of listening to the protagonist, he asks her loudly if he cannot come, and she insists that she doesn't want to implicate him in any way, only for him to embrace her, saying that she should have thought of it while marrying him in the first place, as there is nothing to be done anymore. The whole aroma around the scenario makes her speechless, and he begins to ask her why she is not speaking. Realizing that they have already done enough damage, he begins to hold one of the wine glasses to begin his speech in front of everyone. Once he begins to take a sip of the wine glass, her sister is already out of her mind as she begins to ask him who he is in the first place, as they have never even met each other. Even though he is rather handsome, she thinks to herself that he is nothing but a manservant, so it is rather nonsense in this situation, but she claims that she is glad to see that he has decided to come in, but wants to make sure that the decision was okay in the end. Instead of being a good person, she brings up the topic of him working in the evening, and everyone starts screaming about the protagonist's husband being a manservant at the time. He realizes that she is trying her best to embarrass him and his wife at the same time, and he starts to take a look at the protagonist's face to see how she has been reacting. She starts saying sorry to him, insisting that she was not thinking of getting him involved in this in the first place, and he claims that she can take real action to apologize to him the better way, as there is no way she is letting her sister to bully her. Now that the protagonist thinks that her sister is rather valid to act like this since her father has been partial to her the whole time, and Fengju claims that she has never thought of her to be her sister in the first place. Claiming that he will be taking good care of the protagonist, Fengju kisses her forehead as the situation calms down. While Fengju's co-workers begin to chat with others, the women think that Zionai himself is rather handsome ahead of them, more than what they have been used to seeing on TV. Even so, they are irritated because the protagonist's husband looks far better than him, but they try to hold off from the anger, remembering that a manservant really works using his face, so it is rather normal for him to be handsome. While the crowd is busy thinking of Fengju, Zionai comes in along with the other seniors to make them meet Fengju, who is the chairman of H&J Group. They are not in here for some silly reason, as they think of cooperating with them for the planet plan, and the whole crowd becomes silent, assuming that they have been thinking of someone like him in the worst way possible. Not only them, but also, the protagonist is way out of her mind, knowing that Fengju is everything but nothing like a manservant. On the other hand, the protagonist's sister is unable to believe that Fengju can be this famous and powerful, as if there is no way something like this is happening, as the protagonist seems to have better luck than her. When the others are unaware of the whole situation, one of the waitresses claims that they must have known about the situation if they have paid attention to the news, as the chairman of the company is the most mysterious plutocrat in history, as no one has ever found out how he looked like. Then the protagonist's sister comes in to blame her for impersonating someone with her husband, and Zio-nai starts asking the crowd to see who is not able to understand the situation. The guy even spreads the truth of her sister drugging her in the first place, which makes the crowd to realize what kind of person she is in this whole situation. Then even Guancheng starts holding her hand, demanding her to answer to check out if Zio-nai is speaking the truth, and everyone thinks that they have done well by coming into this wedding ceremony, as they are able to watch something of a drama on their own. Even Guancheng starts berating her for causing something of drama by breaking his marriage with the protagonist, while the other women are busy gushing towards Zio-nai. Guancheng begins to move on his own, saying that the whole drama is rather disrespectful toward him, and the protagonist's sister keeps on following him all the way to make sure that their marriage stays intact. But the guy shrugs her off to move on, and Fengjie thinks of moving on from the function, as they do not have anything to do in there. Before leaving, Fengjie leaves everything to Zio-nai, and he howls while he walks out of the wedding ceremony, holding the protagonist along the line, as they have so much to talk about with each other.